Greetings! I'm Rodger Newbold, and welcome to this episode of Experienced Photography. My fellow photographer and editor in this episode is Matt Rich. Currently, Matt is enveloped himself over in the editing room. I thought I heard his chair creak. Are you there? All right. I'm glad he's in there. We're so pleased to be back with you today. In our past episode, we spoke about polarizing filters. We showed many different types and how they could be of use to you in your photography, and hopefully you've had an opportunity to give one a spin. Oh, sorry for that. Do you remember that the filter factor we discussed last week? That's going to be important. So building on that, it will be a benefit to remember that today. I'll start off today with a quote from a pretty famous photographer, Paul Strand. He was 1890 to 1976. He said, "I say unto you, before you give your time, and you will have to give much to photography, find out in yourself how much it means to you. Since you're here with us today, it's obvious that you do care, and I'm glad about that. There's no question that the camera has become a marvelous recording device. It copies what's in front of us and gives us time to provide acceptable confirmation that we existed. But today we want to put emphasis on the fact that it can be so much more than just a recording. If we desire to allow ourselves the time and effort, we can make photography creative, exciting, and artistic. So we are exploring some entertaining long exposure thoughts to keep you shooting as the sun slowly sinks in the west. I have found that emotion is energy in motion, and I'm fascinated with motion because when things start to move, I get excited. It also gets the viewer involved because the image is no longer static. It also tells me a lot about the photographer's will. So let's get on with the show. I want to start with some pizzazz. So let's take a look at figure number 1. This image is used with permission from a former student and friend of mine, Mr. Sam Scholes of Salt Lake City, Utah. He titled this "Light My Fire," a splendid long exposure of fire balanced with the evening light. It makes your heart pump and your feet dance and pushes all of the right emotional buttons, demonstrating that long exposure imaging is something that maybe we can add to our repertoire. Now you can see more of Sam's work on Flickr, and thank you, Sam. Today we'll discuss many methods of getting into long exposures. The first approach, I think, is pretty easy. It's called shooting during the blue hour. Once the sun sets and everyone else packs up, the easy thing is you just keep on shooting. The blue hour is that period of the soft, lower contrast light that most outdoor photographers consider being one of the best times of the day to take photographs. When we talk about the blue hour in photography, we mean pictures taken during a specific window of time, just as the sun goes down or just before the sun rises in the morning. Now, it generally only lasts about 15 minutes, maybe up to 30, depending upon your location and the time of the year. Now, If you're above the Arctic Circle or below the Antarctic Circle, times may differ, like 24 hours. Golden hour refers to an hour after sunset and 1 hour before sunset, and they usually exhibit the warmer golden tones. But the blue hour, it will usually reveal a pale to dark blue hues as darkness encroaches. Depending upon the humidity level, you may even get a little mix of green tones as well. The colors can easily be enhanced or exaggerated in the camera by using your white balance control. If you take a white balance of, say, 4000K and one at 10,000K, that is degrees Kelvin, remember there is no law stating you can't exaggerate color effects. And who doesn't like a batch of surprises? So give things a try. With such a short moment of opportunity, you must be quick in what you are doing. The best policy is to scout out your location in the light and then have your composition settled. Decide, what tools and what equipment you'll need and be set up. And just by the way, have a method of how to get out of the location in the dark. Yes, being lost is a real thing. Are we remembering this one, or never to speak of it again, my friend? What an exciting time. The blue hour requires a few special items that you should be toting along for the event. We have to cover these in previous episodes, like a tripod and a flashlight, cable release or remote release of some type. Keep from jiggling your camera. And a Gaia GPS, that should be with you. A compass or a compass app. A long exposure app for timing. And if you do post-production work in your computer, always shoot in RAW for the greatest flexibility. When in a time crunch, I turn the camera noise reduction off. If you have 30-second exposure, reduction will add an extra 30 seconds for the application to work in the camera. And you'll lose half of your chances at exposure or compositional changes. And I'd much rather have a good picture than, have to worry about noise. Now, by all means, check your histogram before you shut your camera down and leave. Better to be safe than sorry. Make sure it all worked and you got what you thought you got. So let's see figure number 2. This picture is on the cusp of the sun setting and the blue hour beginning. Long exposures calm the water and mellow out the sky, and the mix of colors provide a multitude of enjoyable soft tones. However, the picture divulges the difference between what something looks like and the expressiveness of what it actually felt like. Techniques we employ should service the artistic concept in the heart and in the mind, and not be rigid and used just as an assignment. So get things right, because long exposure techniques do not mask bad composition. I hope you understand that a great image is not the same thing as an image of something great. Great images are generated by thought, planning, and action. The other, copying or possible simply being the right place at the right time, which I must add is entirely unreliable technique. Now, figure number 3, Matt's picture of the traffic curving gracefully through Zion Canyon during the blue light period reveals how elegant the serpentine of the light appears. Artificial incorporation is the next step in long exposure photography. If we want to produce an extended exposure, a long shutter speed, to get a certain effect during daylight, we can use an ND style of camera filter. Now, ND stands for neutral density. I think the filter name expresses this absolute significance. Neutral of all color cast. A cheap filter often emits that deadly green overtone, occasionally a little blueness, but neither of which are desirable. If you're capturing polluted images, you will discover how difficult it is to correct every single image in post-production. Hand select a filter from your dealer. One you've tested for purity, and or order a well-known superior brand. It should appear as black or very, very dark gray. Take a look at figure number 4. This is a plus 10 stop neutral density filter. I mean, it's black. To slow down the flow of a waterfall or to eliminate moving traffic from a scene, eliminate the choppiness of the ocean water, or disclose blurry autos or bikes, may require various shutter speeds. Therefore, you may need a selection of ND filters for artistic purposes. I have available the polarizer that we talked about last week. That'll take out 1.5 stops. I have a +3 stop, which is called an ND8, a 6 stop, an ND64, and a giant 10 stop, an ND1000. Here we're talking about filter factors that are required to generate satisfactory exposure through the filter. For a successful photograph, we need to first mount the camera on a tripod and determine the composition. Then, determine the daylight exposure without the filter and note what it should be. Third, switch off your autofocus. This is important. Optionally, take down the zoom or focus rings for added security. I just take a little piece of masking tape and just so it doesn't move. Now, gently add your desired filter, because once you add a ND filter, you most likely will not be able to see through the camera when the filter's applied. It's going to be black, especially with a 10 stop. Now, manually set the f-stop and shutter speed, as you had noted, for daylight exposure. And to prevent any light leak into the image, it's advisable that you cover up the eyepiece anytime when the shutter speed is longer than the second and your eye's not up to the eyepiece. Cover it up. They usually furnish a little piece of plastic or something that goes in there. If not, just simply a piece of gaffer's tape will do. Then add the time for the filter factor for your shutter speed. You may be using the B or bulb setting, but using a remote release, you can begin your exposure, and then you can use your watch or your iPhone on LE Exposure app and count down the time the shutter must remain open. Now let's take a quick look at figure number 5. I took a screenshot off of my phone with LE, that's long exposure app. My unfiltered exposure shows it was f11 at a 60th of a second, ISO 100. Now, adding my 10-stop filter, the app shows a new shutter speed of 15 full seconds at the same f-stop and same ISO. Now, the camera is so adjusted and the start button is tapped at the same moment that the camera release is tapped, and that's it, figure number 5. Wow. It will time and let you know when your 15 seconds is up. That, my friends, you have just created an artistic, thoughtful piece of right from the heart. So just keep on dreaming and carry on. See figure 6. An added bonus of ND filters is their ability to filter out anything or anyone in constant motion. In the event that you are attempting a photograph with people milling through your composition, add an ND and generate a long exposure and let her rip. Figure 7 is a picture by Matt that shows that the people will all but disappear. And if the exposure goes long enough, they will disappear. Neutral density filters are also available in graduated styles. You can see that in figure 8. The dark top edge of the filter can be set to block out a overbearing bright sky, while the clear bottom part of the filter shows the foreground and it allows it to be rendered correctly. Now, this image by Matt is called Wave Squared. It illustrates this principle absolutely beautifully at the Wave in Arizona, Utah, on the border. Now, you can witness the long exposure of flowing water while not being distracted by too bright of a sky. It's a beautiful image. Another long exposure technique worth exploring is zooming during your exposure. For this, it requires a shutter speed of around a 15th of a second, or a little bit slower. At your lowest ISO, your smallest f-stop, or using a mild ND +3 or so, should get you there. It takes a little practice to become fluid as you smoothly move your zoom ring. So practice this. I generally set to manual focus and then begin twisting the zoom ring control just the instant before I snap the shutter release. Now, if you have a push-pull zoom, that will work too. So best practice that to keep things really smooth. But I think the results are just stopping. Heart-stopping. Oh yeah. Figure 10. Yeah. I laugh because if you don't have a zoom, or you don't have one handy, no worry. Just find or create a shutter speed that is in the correct range. Now determine your composition. Get her set and look at it and make sure you got everything right. Now, you just start off on a gallop and run towards your subject and release the shutter en route. You can take a look at figure number 11. I never let the fact that I look like an odd one hold me back from being creative. Who cares? You have the shot and they don't. Woohoo! Figure 11. It's a building in Capitol Reef, and if you don't have a zoom, use your feet as a zoom. Now, caution. Long exposures keep the shutter electrified the entire time the shutter is open. So our advice is check your battery condition often and carry a spare. Last thing you want to do is run out of gas halfway through the day. When we pay attention to our creative development, our photographs show the expanding horizons of our spirit. And as we broaden our point of view, the mood of our images also widens, and a mature artistic personality begins to develop. So cherish your own emotions. Never undervalue them. I don't care what anybody else says. My friends, our time is up for today. We certainly hope that you've had some new ideas given to you today, that they will flourish into something that you can use, and I hope you'll go out this weekend and try them out. If this has been a value to you, please give us the big thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel. By all means, let your friends know that we offer experienced advice. With that, everybody can become a better photographer. I'm always picking up new stuff, so share it with your friends and let them know that they can come here. Please keep your comments coming into us. We really appreciate them. And I hope you found this to be the absolute best vlog you watched today. So until we meet again on the screen, bye-bye and so long for now.